extraordinaire, the gemologist.
Yo, what up, Carl? Just listening to your latest episode, Classic Responses, and you were talking about how you got the players for the first time with those droids, and that just made me think how much fun it is to get the players. And it's hard to do, right? You talked about how that was the first time and maybe you're getting better. I don't know if it's about you getting better. It's just hard to do. Like, even it doesn't matter how good you are, it's hard to friggin' do. And the one time I did it the best, it was one of the greatest moments of my gaming life when the players figured out. Huge spoilers for Wheeler Woe that nobody cares about. But there was, yeah, so if you care about Wheeler Woe, stop listening. I've talked about it a little bit before, but there was a bad guy named Raleigh Mock who was a thorn in their side for quite a while, and they never met him. He was just always in the background messing with them. And at the same time, they had sort of an ally, more of a neutral ally named Hamilcar, and they were the same dude because Raleigh Mock is just an anagram of Hamilcar. And when they finally figured, and I dropped clues here and there, and when they finally pieced that shit together, it was so amazing. The players were, it was just the best, dude. And the fact I have that recorded, it just makes me really happy. I love getting the players. And I'm really bad at it. So the fact that I was able to pull that off for as long as I did, I'm just really pumped about it. And then, yeah, making homebrew worlds, sometimes the players won't go to stuff. And for me, that doesn't matter. Like, I hear people talking about, like, why would you build a world if they're not going to go to it? Who cares? It's the whole world, right? The world exists. If they go to it, great. If not, great. And yeah, like, I just love homebrew games. I'm having fun running Wrath of the Righteous, but I really can't wait to get back to running a homebrew game, man. It's my preferred way to run games. But anyway, dude, great episode. Keep it up, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. I have BJ Boyd with me today, also known as Game Doc on the Discord, also the author of the podcast, The Arcane Alienist. And today we're going to discuss, based on a call from Joe Richter behind Sightless, which you just heard, we're going to discuss this question or this idea in context, right? Tricking the players, throwing out plot twists. Is this just a great way to throw adventurers and adventures at players, or is it just another form of railroading? That's the premise I had, and I have a couple anecdotes to discuss that, and then I think BJ was kind enough to come on in and join me because it's a hard topic for me to, mostly as a GM, to digest. And we both play, we both GM, so we can discuss it. We can even actually maybe even discuss it a little bit in what you've thrown at us in Temple of Elemental Evil.
The Village of Hamlet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in the Village of Hamlet, right? So the conspiracy and craziness that goes on there.
Yeah.
So I think I briefly mentioned, and I'll rehash them again, two things. The first one is so in the Enemy Within campaign, there is a point this is a big spoiler, but this campaign has been around since the 90s, and there's so many sidebars in the latest version that everyone who has played this before, and a lot of people are playing it again, who played it in the first edition, second edition. So they know this is coming, right? Because they played it before. And what happens is that at the end of the Death on the Reich, the players who have invested and put time in and been flying up and down the Reich River, doing some like river trucking, price of trade, and it's their form of transport, they lose their boat. And I kind of threw this at the players, and I think I set it up well in that there had been attempts on their boat to try to sabotage their boat before, and I think this time either they weren't paying attention or I played it up really well. So they had just had this big big boom, kaboom, and this destruction of this castle. They've defeated chaos. They're high on themselves and high on life. They come back to their their quote unquote hometown on the river, Kemperbad, and they've been given like a writ of mark to be a privateer on the river and fly the flag of Kemperbad. And we even found a cool design of the flag. And then, of course, since there's celebrities in town, they get invited to a party. And the guys who have been after them for a long time in the campaign, on and off, are part of this machination. So, and they're going to go to this party, and they've just been hired to transport stuff all the way down river to Marienburg, which is like the equivalent of like so imagine if they're like on the Rhine River and they're in Germany, and now they're going to travel all the way to the Netherlands, right? So that's kind of how that works. So and then they're at this party, and then they come back, they see smoke, and they're like, "Oh, I think you just got us, Carl." And I think it turns out, yeah, that their boat's on fire. But it's interesting. It's not a total screw job. It's not a total financial loss because and I also played this up too. Maybe this helped because one of the players is like a lawyer. His career is a lawyer. So we did the whole like negotiate, and so it is built in that it's not a total screw job for the players. There's a way out, and they get the insurance on the boat. It's just the boat is going to be on dry dock for a while, right? That's the idea. Get them off the boat because we want them to go into the interior and go to this one city, right? That's the whole point of it. But I think it worked,
Right.
and I think I got the players, I got them. So I mean, and it definitely is part of the plot, but it was the players' decision to go to the party. They didn't leave anyone behind. There's some NPCs left behind, but we don't, if NPCs are there on the boat, well, shit can happen, I guess. And none of the NPCs, none of the animals were stabled off the boat. They even dressed up their mascot Fang. I think they're called the Company of Fang, not Company of the Company of Fang. That's the name of their group. And so they brought Fang along too. They dressed the dog up,
No,
took it to
no
the party.
animals.
So no animals were harmed in this fire.
No,
The NPCs survived. It just lost a lot of stuff. And then they realized it was kind of a setup because when they examined the burning wreckage, or like they're transporting crap. They're transporting they're supposed to be transporting this expensive stuff, and it was kind of like junk. So then but that's the whole plot. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, BJ? What about that one? I mean, is that
well,
a plot twist? Is it because it's written in the adventure?
I think, yeah. Well, I think if there's no risk in role-playing games, you lose some of the fun. And I think it depends on the type of game you're playing and the stakes you're playing for and things like that. But at some point, once your characters are no longer kind of starting out peons, death really it becomes less and less of a likelihood. The more powerful they get, the more experience they get, and at some point, it's more expedient to threaten their stuff than it is to threaten their lives. So that when I say stuff, I mean it could be NPCs that are important to them, but yeah, take it on their ship or their status. They've achieved status, a minor. They become a minor noble, and now that someone frames them for something, and their status is in question, or they've got a keep, but it gets saying if they have a keep, but then someone runs them out of the keep and takes it from them, and they have to get it back, or threatening their status, things, their place in the world, can be just as nail biting as threatening the death of their character. And again, it depends on which players and what kind of game you're playing. But I know as players become more powerful, why now we're going to throw you going to, if you die penniless of old age in an alley because all that fame and fortune was taken from you. That's you can create some tension there as well.
Yeah, and I think what's great about Enemy Within is they give you a lot of advice, and then I think there's a lot of leeway in it too. And yeah, I appreciate the authors because they're like, I know this happened before, and they have sidebars. Like, so what if the players do everything in their power to prevent this from happening? That's okay, right? So there's contingencies. Now, in contrast, I ran an adventure. I ran an adventure for Iron Kingdoms 5e that the players did not particularly care for the railroad. They did not care for the. They did not care for being framed because it didn't. It it made no sense to them, right? they were parting. They were parting with like the guard, and there was no point in time where they could have been framed for what they were accused of doing. And then when the guard shows up and tries to, arrest them and take their stuff, there's some hostility, right, among the players even too.
Right.
Sure, among their characters are going to react, but among the players, one player like ducked out, and the guard chased him a little bit, but he got away. And some of the other players were arguing, well, this is my family blade. You can't take it from me. I'll fight you here for it. And we had to like stop and say, okay, well, what's going on here? I think, fortunately, one of the players I would say got a little angry, right, heated, right, because players don't like getting their stuff taken, and it was such a ridiculous flame job, and maybe, one, I'm trying to go with the game as written and how it goes, but I think partially my fault for not seeing the flaw here and making it a little more plausible, right?
Yeah.
So
but at one point you got to wonder if I'm being framed and everybody's going along with it, how deep does the conspiracy go? It's just completely, should be obvious to anybody who was here that I didn't do that, but everybody's nodding their head. So what's going on? I would take that more as an invitation that there's a bigger mystery to investigate.
Yeah,
that's me.
Right, but it was kind of like it was weird. I don't think it worked very well because it wasn't some like big conspiracy either. It was just to get the player. It was a very, and maybe that was the point. It was a very sloppy attempt to frame the characters. And when the characters realized that, they just talked it out, to the guard and said, well, and I think one player even said, we were drinking together. What are you talking? There's impossible. You know what I mean? He kind of pointed that out, right? So, but but that's I guess is that a flaw? Is that a flaw in trying to get the players to go where you want them to go as a GM, or is that a flaw of the writing? Combination of both.
That to me sounds like it was either a flaw in the writing and that it was just a poorly conceived piece of that adventure that whoever wrote it didn't think about all the possible implications or didn't give enough latitude for the game master to have some different contingency plans on what if it goes this way, what if it goes that way.
Right.
Yeah, maybe the GM can always the GM can always improvise on the fly, but I know when you are running a written adventure, you don't want to deviate too far because there's stuff 2-3 chapters later that might come back to bite you, that you went too far off the rails, for lack of a better term, and now I've got to rewrite the rest of this. We're only a third of the way through this adventure, and I got to rewrite the rest of it because you guys didn't make that left turn at Albuquerque.
Right.
I think there's. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask if you had go ahead and finish your thought up by all means, but I was going to say if you had an example, like, because the other one I want to talk about is the infamous droid resistance story.
Well, I mentioned it a couple times before when I did the Traveler Mongoose Second Edition Traveler starter set. It's very much a railroad.
Is that the High and Dry adventure?
No, it's the box set. There's several issues with it, but for me, but I think one of the things is when you pitch Traveler, it's a space opera, and people really look at the rules. They read about Traveler online. They talk to people who played it, and they that unless you're qualified, oh no, this is what we're gonna do. I mean, Traveler is really about getting in a spaceship and around the galaxy and having adventures.
Yeah,
and you can do space trucking. You can fight aliens. There's lots of things, but it usually is about we get a ship and we fly around in space. You have a cold open and they're on a ship and it crashes, borrowing ships and vehicles from different NPC benefactors. And so, and it's just, a lot of introductory adventures are railroads because they want, okay, well, this first encounter, we're going to teach you to use this part of the rules. The second encounter, we're going to incorporate. So I see what it was doing. and everybody could kind of get on board with that because we were all learning the game. But just the idea that they kept wanting to get their shit. That there was always this, okay, we took
Yeah,
care
I
of
always
that.
want
Can
to
we
get
have
my
our
shit back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like, well,
Well,
and
and
so I had
that's
to
a
keep
good
coming
that's
up
a
with
good
reasons why they
motivation.
could have it back. Yeah,
That's a good motivation. I know there's a one in Mega Traveler. There's an adventure in Mega Traveler. It's actually something I'd love to run one of these days. But it's an adventure path called it is a legitimate adventure path called Nightfall. It takes place during in Mega Traveler. There's a civil war that takes place in the canonical Third Imperium Empire, and there's a you, the, your the world that you're on gets invaded by an opposing army, and I mean, and that and you. So the thing is, like, what I think is cool about that one is like you do a few things on your ship beforehand, and then when you're out doing something, or because of the occupation or the invading army, right? You lose your ship. But then the cool thing I think
yeah,
about that is that then the motivation is to get our damn ship back. You track it down. I think it's pretty cool. So I think that is, I think, an effective way of using that sort of twist, or that sort of, you get the
mm-hmm.
characters, but then it serves as a motivation for them, in the future, right? I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
What do you think about plot twists where you have one player, you recruit one player to help you pull off something against the
Oh,
other ones?
like a plant, huh?
Yeah.
See, those have happened for me. They've happened spontaneously. They haven't happened like I've recruited a player. So it's been like,
Mm-hmm.
in some of my, I ran like Warhammer Warhammer stuff for a long time. Not like Space Marine stuff. So it's Inquisitor. It's called Dark Heresy. Okay. It used to be called Inquisitor. Now it was Dark Heresy.
Yeah.
When And we ran a long Dark Heresy campaign, and there are like machinations all over the place. Like even in one adventure, the characters like woke up and they're like, they didn't realize where they were at, and they're like in the bowels underground on some planet, and they learned slowly that their Inquisitor had died, and they'd become part of an ambush. Their memories were partially wiped, and they had to figure, but the twist on that one is one of the players in one of the adventures later on found a prescribed text, and then began, saying, "Well, I want to start texting me or emailing me and say, I want to learn how this book goes, blah blah blah." And eventually, the other players found out, right? So I don't know if he wasn't. We really working together
Yeah.
to screw the players. Just the other players found out that he was, in a way, becoming an agent of chaos, right? So then that led to like a PvP situation. So I don't know if I've ever gotten a player to like help me necessarily.
Yeah. I've done it twice. Years ago, I kind of started this new group, and a new guy wanted to join after we'd had a couple of sessions. Like, well, how am I going to get his character in with the group? And I didn't want to do the just, oh, you find this guy tied up in a room, in room 54 of the dungeon. So I decided to do a special session where it was like we're going to let him kind of go through his kind of initial introductory adventure, and everybody else could just play an NPC. That just one, it's for everybody else. It's a one-off. For him, it's a chance to kind of flesh out his character, and then at the end, he'll be on track to meet the other characters. But I had another player basically, and the other player went along with it just fine, and nobody got upset about it. It was fun. And the more recent time I've done it was when we started my Storm King's Thunder campaign, and I got this idea from actually a Matt Colville video where one of the players he made what character, and then I got an idea. Why don't you play your first character for the first session? At the end, I'll just kill him, and just add shock of like, oh my god, our party. We even went back to, we were kind of linking everybody's guy that knew them all. He was the friend that brought them all together.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the end of the first vision, a demon rips his head off and pops back to the abyss with his body. And I was like, well, he's gone. And then, they get into town and they find meet the other player, the player's actual character that he's going to play for the campaign. That was pretty cool. I don't think it had the shock value I wanted it to, but I had fun. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. That'd be like I don't know if you've heard of the Masks of Nyarlathotep, the big
Hmm.
cult. That'd be like having, because there's a in the new one there's an intro where you meet Jackson Elias earlier. He's kind of the what brings you all together when Mask starts for real. But that'd be like having, if someone no one had ever known about Masks of Nyarlathotep, you could have someone play Jackson Elias, right? And then they're like, and then when the next adventure, he's like, oh yeah, he's dead, you know. But a player character played him, you know, and you could go ahead and with the player, even have the player character like argue with you. That's not right, you know. And then you just say, we just got to make another character. That's what happened, you know, type of thing. I just rolled randomly, and one of the characters is supposed to die. So sorry, you know, type of thing. I don't know. You could kind of do that. It'd be kind of fun. It might be fun. But you're right. You'd have to get a player to
Yeah.
kind of go along with it. Um, and then do the other players not no longer trust that player? Now, yeah, I can't. I don't know. In one of my campaigns, I can't really share too much. I don't know how my players list, but you know, all the players have secrets, you know, and I think that could be fun for some players too. I mean, as long as, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's a hard thing. I don't think I'd ever do it. I'm not a big fan of PvP. Well, I don't know. See, I think where I gotten upset in a game with PvP is when a character does something stupid that you know is going to hurt the rest of the party. Like toss
Yeah.
down an AoE that you know the rest of the group can't survive, but you just want to do it because, you know, because, right? I don't like that. I don't like cheap, you know, it's like a cheap laugh, you know, to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and I don't like coming into a game where I don't know it's going to be PvP because maybe I can't see all the nuance about it, and I always try to be good, and then a player tricks me and then kills me, you know, kills my character, right? Tricks me and then kills my character. I mean, but I guess if you know, if you
Yeah.
know that everyone's backstabby and you know everyone's out, out to get everyone over, you know, no honor. You're all a bunch of rogues, no honor among thieves. You know, maybe that could work. You know, that
Yeah,
could be
when I was in
interesting.
high school, yeah, when I was in high school, we were going to play it was an AD&D game. It didn't last very long. It was not going to last long anyway by design. But we could have any class, even from Oriental Adventures, and then somebody had said, "Let's play an evil campaign," and it suddenly convinced us all to play ninjas, and each of us was assigned to assassinate one of the other characters,
Yeah, that'd be. I don't know.
without
I've
any of
heard.
us knowing.
I don't know. That could be. Yeah. So then, if no one knows, yeah, how did that go over? Was it cool? I mean, I guess if you're in high school, is it
Oh,
cool?
I wouldn't do that now, but that's a 16-year-old. That's a 16-year-old DM solution, not wanting to run a campaign that his friends want him to run.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to
Yeah, I mean,
teach you a lesson.
I've heard a more cooperative situation where because it's really cool because in effectively in the old Asian Adventures stuff, right? A ninja was multi-class, and the ninja part was hidden,
Yeah.
so you could be like a Bushi Wuyen
Hmm.
Shikenja. Not could you be Shikenja? Bushi Wuyen Yakuza or Sohi Ninja, right? So you could be like those four classes, which and then they're all ninjas with the same family. Grill Wizard Gabriel, he said he had a campaign where they ran like that. That sounded really fascinating to me. I think that'd be pretty cool that you could do that. I don't know if you could. I don't know if you could do that in. I know you could do that in like the Asian Adventures first edition stuff, but I don't know if you could do that in like L5R or not. I don't know if it would work because of the clan structure.
Yeah.
Everyone's technically from a different clan, and no one trusts Scorpion Clan. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you could do that. But it sounds like a pretty cool concept. But then that could be. I guess that's. I mean, are ninjas necessarily evil? I don't know. But then that brings us to like an evil campaign. How do you run it? Are the players cooperative? There's definitely going to be a lot of plot twists right there if players have their own
Yeah.
agendas, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's what we're driving
Hmm.
towards is you know, give the players agency, and then if they throw in their plot twists, That's okay. That kind of works, and then let the other players decide
Yeah.
how they're going to deal with it. Right? There's all those threats, like especially like I was saying, the enemy within campaign, they picked the various players have picked stuff up, right? And I mean, they're all. I think they're all very good because we roll at the table, we roll openly, and let's say, for example, one of the players picked up like a staff of necromancy, but no one else really knows it's a staff of necromancy. Although slowly, like his horse is becoming corrupt because he stores it on one of his horses, right? So his horse
Yeah.
is going to eventually probably have some sort of chaos mutation. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then they're like, but
Yeah.
the players. I mean, the players know what's going on, and it's kind of funny. But then their characters they're really good at saying that their characters don't know. But then the thing is, like some of the characters, if they were to find out, they'd be like, I have to do something about this because like one of them's like a witch hunter, right? Where they
Yeah.
find out. Another one is very strongly has strong views about chaos. Like there's one incident where his character kind of lost it and went through the streets hunting down cultists. After they had broken the cult ring, they all fled into the night, and he just chased them down and like murdered several of them, in cold blood. So he's kind of fanatic when it comes to that. So I think if they were to find out, I mean, it would. But then again, that kind of twist, and that's really not tricking. That's players tricking players. Um,
Yeah.
maybe is better. I mean, what about
Well,
go ahead.
I would say the I guess back to the original question is a plot twist a railroad?
Right. Yeah, well, let me give the example. Let me tell about the story of the droid resistance, right? So the adventure, and one of my players is like his second best favorite adventure that I've run for him. His first being Rough Night at the Three Feathers of Warhammer Fantasy, which is there's so many there's a lot of plots going on, and the player gets to get involved in the plot or not. Sitting at a tavern and watching shit happen. That's Rough Night at Three Feathers. Classic adventure. First appeared in a White Dwarf magazine, and they've redone it for second edition and fourth edition of Warhammer Fantasy. But his second favorite adventure is I don't remember the name of it, and that's okay because I won't spoil it for you. But it's an adventure where they went to like a mining colony, and they couldn't find they're supposed to deliver something. They're playing Edge of Empire, so they're kind of like on the shady side of things, right? So they're smugglers and scoundrels, right? And then they're like, but there's no one here, so what's going on? And the only information comes from the droids that have been left because in Star Wars, droids are like totally overlooked, right? And the droids kind of lead them to believe that there are these pirates that are further down in the mines and have taken prisoner of the other colonists, right? So then the players go and they're like, well, we got to show us some freaking pirates, man. So they're not our pirates. They're like a rival, probably like a rival syndicate pirates or whatever. So they go
Yeah.
they go in there, and then it turns out when they get there, it's like the miners are like, what are you talking about? We don't need any rescue. We need like some help because the droids have taken over. And then the players like, what? Because they totally overlooked all the droids that were around. And there's something in the Star Wars universe called the droid resistance, and these droids were members of the resistance. So I totally got them, and I guess I played it so cool. Like even when they met a droid and they got information from a droid, like a little R2 unit type of thing, they're like, oh, of course he's telling the truth. It's a droid. They can't lie, right? I mean, I guess that was in the back. I don't know what their players are thinking, but that was in the back of their mind. And then by the time they realized they had to like rush back, fight a bunch of droids off, and then try to. I think one or two of the droids did get away on a different ship, but they did not steal their ship, so they were able to rescue their ship. And I think they thought they destroyed. And droids are tough. That's the crazy thing, right? So droids are pretty tough in Star Wars game. So it would have been interesting actually. Like, what if a player character had been a droid? That would have been it. I think that would have been a pretty interesting
Yeah.
concept.
The droids tried to recruit him
Yeah, I
to
think the droids definitely would try to
the
recruit.
to
Yeah, and then I mean, but then like, what if you didn't? Like, what you would have to do it. Oh, you'd
resistance.
have to do it very clandestinely, and you have to do it. You would have had to have contacted the player character as a droid when they were already away, because it wouldn't work if you did it while they were doing the investigative part. because then the player could have just given up the ghost. So you want to make it so that
Yeah.
the player is like either would get mad that they didn't know before, or like, oh, this is perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna, and then delay the player characters, try to kill them or fight them or something, for the resistance. Anyway, it's a really good adventure. It's in the Star Wars GM screen, the Edge of Empire GM. But it's pretty fun adventure. But that's a pretty major twist, right? I mean, it's like a total hoodwink on the players, and maybe so now. I mean, so then after that, of course, you could never. After that, I could never get him again, right? They totally untrusting of droids, so you could never really use that trope again. And I think some of them like would never. A couple of the players, they had their player characters like, we're not going to use droids. Droids will get away from my ship. Shoot droids on sight just because. So yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think? So that's the droid story.
That's a good story. I would have loved to played in that. And that's just funny. I mean, it's right. I mean, very typical of Star Wars. I mean, everybody overlooks the droids. They think they're just they're not people,
Right.
and you never see it coming. Nobody listens to them. Nobody takes them seriously. So,
Right.
That's
right. Like R2. We all know R2's the hero of the whole saga.
Oh yeah.
Skywalkers are stupid.
Yeah.
R2 saves the day every time.
I guess I was thinking, is a plot twist a railroad? Well, I guess a plot twist can kind of be a quantum over. This is going to happen no matter what you did.
Right, like the quantum burning, right? The quantum burning of the ship and the enemy within. Right?
Yeah, but is that always bad? I guess that's the question I always is railroading always bad, or is it sometimes necessary to maintain certain aspects of a campaign or an adventure? I mean, the ultimate. I mean, if you take it too far and say, well, this is all player driven and it's just a big sandbox, and the DM's like, well, yeah, I didn't really plan for you guys to go off that edge of the map, so I guess I'll see you next week.
Right.
I think there's a bit of a social contract.
Yeah.
That you play the game that the GM offers, and it that doesn't mean the GM can't suck it up by being too railroady or too rigid or too restrictive or too cliche or whatever. I think they're just witnessing a story the GM wrote play out. They're actors that have been given a role and now being given direction. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and a lot of players will take hooks. Right, they'll take hooks. So, I mean, I've had players tell me I don't want to play in the sandbox. I want a story to follow, and sometimes so they still have. I feel like in my games at least they still have enough choice that they don't have to take all the hooks. So sometimes they do. It just depends on the moral fiber of the character, right? Like I think even recently, and I guess use Enemy Within I use Enemy Within as a good example because I think it's well written. There's lots of options. You can go in different directions. I think that's the main thing, right? There is an overall plot, but you can go in different directions. And I think like there is actually a mini discussion, not so much an argument between players. Like one player, like in this latest adventure, it was a side trek really, and one player is like, "Well, we want to help these people in this village," and the other player's like, "Yeah, but we don't. Who cares?" Some players like, "Who cares? We need to get to Middenheim, right?" And the other player's like, "Yeah, but these people, we need to help them." It just depends on how they feel their character is driven, right? And then then eventually they took the hook, and then just the players being very competent and on mission focus, they solved the problem in a different way than it was outlined, I feel, in the actual story, right? So they're very proactive and did things that were in the adventure, but not in the right order, which I think is awesome.
Well, to remind you, we're playing the starter kit intro. It's very railroady. Why don't we just get through this next couple of chapters, and then I'll come up with something that's a little more. And a friend of mine that was playing it, who's done a lot of DM, was like, "Yeah, I think I get your point." It's like he was telling me about one time when he ran Tomb of Horrors, and they kept wanting to leave the dungeon. He's like, "Oh, well, they're leaving the dungeon to rest, resupply. and then there's leaving the dungeon in search of side quests. It's like we kind of all agreed we were going to play Tomb of Horrors. That's what I prepared. So
That'd be like you guys in Abomination Ball say, I think we just want to go to Absalom now.
it'd be like if we just took off and said, "Well, we're going to go hang out in Absalom,"
Yeah.
taking a show, go to the top of the Empire State Building,
Yeah.
get hot.
And then I'd run the adventure path that takes place in Absalom. Right, because there is one.
Yeah, and that's I think we probably, if you look at the DNA of role playing games and then kind of how we assume, I think Gary Gygax did back in the days when they were kind of making the game and first playing the game, it was a game designed around the DM kind of creating a homebrew. So I mean, they were really surprised that people asked them for written adventures.
Right.
There was guidance and instruction on, we'll create a town, create a dungeon. Here's stuff for wilderness from when they trek back and forth to the locations, and we got the sandbox sort of idea evolved out of that. And I think that's kind of where a lot of our basic assumptions about the way the game is played still rests on that paradigm, even though some people still do it that way and some people do it other ways. And I think there's this assumption that the DM always has a trick up their sleeve, no matter what we do as players, and that's not always true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jiggy, that's okay if you want to take off for Absalom. I got that dungeon right here ready to go. No, you don't. I mean, you might if we were lucky, but it might also be time to stop. I'll see you guys next week.
Or I feel like I don't know if it's a time thing, but way back when I was running like my Forgotten Realms AD&D campaign, and the players' characters were based in like Waterdeep or Silvery Moon. I guess it depended. I had multiple groups. That was a crazy thing. I had like groups because people couldn't play it, different schedules, could play at different times. I guess I had more flexibility, but it was kind of like, people had characters up in the north, people had characters in Waterdeep, and then but they sometimes they go in different directions, and you could always like look at the adventure hooks, like if they went, if they left Waterdeep or went somewhere, you could look at the adventure hooks in there, and a lot of times, what I really loved incorporating was, so I subscribed to Dungeon Magazine, and they'd always have like either a sidetrack or an actual adventure. And I would just incorporate them, or take an adventure hook and run my own thing, just depending on where they went. Right. So if they had, say they really had a dislike for Zentarum, and they followed a caravan, secretly left Waterdeep, and they could deal with that. So I think that was. So I think that was more character driven, and I really enjoyed that. I really definitely enjoyed the character driven aspect of sort of a, it's not my own world. It's a shared world, and in a way, it's a sandbox world. And I'm, wondering how, I was thinking about going back to this and thinking how I would run Kingmaker now. So I don't know, because that has like there is a story arc somewhat, but then there is also a sandbox. So that's what's interesting, right? There's you can go exploring, or you can just play in this. You can do the plot, or you can play in the sandbox. I guess.
Well, I think the West Marches style has evolved as a way to do sandbox, to kind of make sure the DM doesn't just have to make something up on the fly, because there's this downtime where outside a game, the players sort of look at the map and they look at the hooks, and they go through their list of, here's some kind of side quests or side quests or other plot hooks we've kind of come across, and then they tell the DM what they want to do, and the DM goes, okay, well, that's what I'll have prepared for when we play next time, and then we'll go work through that, and then you guys go back to your list of what do you want to do, and then I have a week or two to prepare that, as opposed to having, I've got a sandbox, but I don't have every little thing planned out right at the second to go. You tell me where you want to go. Right. That's what I'll prepare. And
that's how I always enjoyed also like playing in a sandbox. And again, maybe this is going to like character driven instead of, is that a character driven sort of campaign versus like a story that the GM has in mind. I know one game system I like to run. I don't know if you are familiar or ever played or run Riddle of Steel, but they always had like they were not called motivations, but they were always some, a few things that the character's goals what the characters' goals were.
Hmm.
And then you'd always encourage the characters to discuss their goals and what they wanted to do, especially with the GM. And then the point of us like a session was to like push your agenda or your goal or move towards your goal and then do something and towards that ambition. Maybe they were called ambitions, but I really enjoyed that style of play because it just wherever the players went, and there was like a mission, right? That the players were all kind of on that might have been driven by one of the player characters, but then there's always like these things that happened around or the side that kind of changed the direction of the campaign depending on how or what the another player's ambition might be. And how I really enjoyed running in Harn World using the Riddle Steel rules because of the players'
Yeah.
drive and ambition.
I think
But
if
how
you have
could you do that in like a traditional? I mean, that's a almost a unique aspect, and I'm sure there's other games that do it, but that's a unique aspect of that game, giving it a more narrative style. And how could you? I mean, we always talk about immersion, emerging, but how could you,
yeah.
versus like the backstory? But how could you do that in a traditional, D&D game?
Well, I think probably the trick in a traditional D&D game, and again, it probably depends on the type of game because I think there's more than one traditional type of D&D game, but I think you can have a more or less it's got to the plot, the pace of it has to be slow enough that the players can stop and smell the flowers. They can form relationships with NPCs. They can take an interest in the local surroundings and have some time to just do what they want to do or what they find interested in. So like with the Village of Hamlet, which we've just wrapped up. There's a whole plot that's going to it's going to happen regardless of what the players do, and you kind of get involved in it with the Temple of Elemental Evil. But at the same time, like you guys wanted to buy an interest in the local inn, you want to kind of establish yourselves the plot. And one of the things I found was difficult with Storm King's Thunder, and if I ever run it again, this would be a major change, was Storm King's Thunder has you bouncing around all over the north. Um, and I felt like nobody had a time to form a relationship with any of the NPCs. And so they really, by the end, I don't know if they were so much interested in the plot as they were just so much interested in getting to the boss fight and having fun with a good fight. They enjoyed it, but it was like I don't think the plot really mattered to them so much as it was, well, we're here to play D&D and we get to fight a giant or a dragon or. I think if you could contain an adventure to a smaller location and like there's a clear beginning, middle, and end, and time to be in that location before you're bouncing around to the next. And in the end might be, oh no, it was this villain was behind it all along, and now you're gonna have to travel. You're gonna have that might work, but I think some of the 5e stuff really, to me, there's just too much. It's not even a good hex crawl. 20 miles here, 20 miles there. It's like you're moving across the entire continent from set piece to set piece.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a long ramble. That makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does because I mean I feel like adventure. So and maybe it could be a thing of like how like 5e and Pathfinder, for example, these are the ones that I'm familiar with and have these long adventures, but it just goes so fast, right? And then you jump around. I remember when we were playing Starfinder Dead Suns, which is a really fun adventure path. You do star hop a lot, but I know there is at least one adventure where like one of the players was like, well, we want to kind of stay here and help. We just did a lot of stuff for the locals, but we don't really we want to get to know them better. We want to stay here and do stuff with them, right? And because of the way the adventure is going, like go level, you don't stay there very long because of the timeline. But then definitely the player revisited that, which I thought was cool. Like after the big showdown, the big enemy, they're like, well, I want to go back to that place. That place where we met those indigenous peoples, and I want to go back there and get to know them and learn about their culture all this kind of stuff. And so I thought that was pretty cool that they remember that and want to go back. But you're right in these event, and then things happen so fast. I was thinking like all these location jumping places, and in a way, man, that's why I think Abomination Vault is kind of cool because you can go to the village, and I've tried to encourage relationships with the locals and stuff, and I don't know if it's worked, yes and no, but I think that's a benefit of a campaign like that, which is pretty cool.
I think Abomination Vaults does a very good job of that because there's a clear sense of there is a sense of time pressure in that if we don't figure out how to turn off this doomsday device, it's going to destroy another town.
Sure.
But it's not so breakneck that we don't go back to town. And I think the crafting rules, the way Pathfinder does the crafting rules, and it introduces them early on, and it's something you want to engage with, but it takes time. That almost gives it helps pace it because like, okay, well, we want to get down there and solve this mystery, but we also want to make sure we're properly equipped. Yeah. And if we take a few extra days in town, we can make some armor and weapons, or we can enchant some items, or we can brew some potions that'll be helpful when we go back. So yeah, I felt like Abomination Vaults had enough of I don't think it's not too sandboxy, but there's clearly the home base where you can get to know the NPCs. There's the faction play in the dungeon, and then there's the overarching, there's still kind of a crisis that we're trying to solve as quickly as possible. So I feel like it has some really good elements of a basic classic dungeon crawl adventure that gives room for all of that.
So Paizo's done good and bad, I think, with that. I know, like in one, I'm trying to look at find the name of the adventure path if I can find it. That way, we started it, and Strange Aeons. So I started Strange Aeons, and it was a great start. You wake up without your memories, and you're in this asylum, and the asylum's really messed up, right? You got to escape the asylum, right? And then in the next adventure, you go to this town, and everybody hates you, and you don't know why because your memories are still messed up. And then you kind of save the town, and then and then it wants you to go somewhere way far away to quote unquote get revenge on the person who took your memories away. But then the players were more interested in that. We just kind of like saved this town where they thought we were a bunch of a-holes. We want to stay here for a while and make amends. Why would we want to leave? There's no reason to leave, right? So I think the jumping around in a way sometimes it's not conducive to a good story, right?
Yeah,
and it is too fast, and maybe that's why I appreciate like games like Warhammer Fantasy and Call of Cthulhu, which are not level based and use incremental, and maybe even Traveler would work that way. Traveler is even slower, and technically there's no Mega and Mongoose Travel, right? There's no, except for training, there's no like advanced XP, right? It's just you get stuff and you play the story. But in like the level based ones, the skill based ones like Warhammer and Call of Cthulhu, I think there's more time to get to know the world and engage with the world, right? So the players feel like we're not gonna level out of we can stay here and get to know these NPCs and there's XP for role playing. We know that, but we're not gonna level out of this area, right? We're not gonna level out of this.
Well, one of the things even with like D,
we're really going off the rails now, aren't we?
Yeah, even the classic D&D, if you play like BX, because we're both doing BX games, OSC games. If you cut the amount of treasure you give out in half, every time you roll treasure, just cut it in half. You can spend more time at first through third level and get through two basic level adventures.
Well, for sure, and I think that's why I didn't include modern games in my thinking. Or sorry, I didn't include the older games in my thinking of like breakneck pace through an adventure path because I'm feeling bad. Like in Lost City, I'm like, oh man, how long are these poor saps gonna slog it out at first level? But it does. The slower progression helps you to engage in the story, and maybe I could give like XP for like I think I did. I gave XP for you like solving the. I gave XP like as monsters for solving the situation, diffusing a potential violent situation, which I think is
Yeah.
fine, you know. But it's still not going to until you find a huge treasure hoard. You're not going to go
Yeah.
up, and that you know that's kind of the way. It's kind of interesting, and the way that the lower the older adventures are is right. It's not killing monsters. It's finding treasure, right? And
Yeah.
guess I guess when that changed, then you have the sort of potential to level out a situation, and you never you're always on the go, and you never get to interact with the people
Okay.
and the
Kind of.
players.
It kind of helps encourage the murder hobo mentality.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true. That's true.
we're
Yeah.
we're transient guns for hire, and like Arlen was saying in our last Cerebrivore, you know,
Hmm.
even the ancient Greek heroes were kind of like, "Oh, you saved the village. When you leaving?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Get out of here.
because you solved trouble, but you also kind of attracted as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's kind of the mentality.
Yeah, we are kind of off field. What were we talking about? Railroads?
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Um, yeah, I guess that is the thing, right? Maybe that is why these modern adventure paths for the more modern games feel like railroads because it is such a clack 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 go go go, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but but I think you know in these older games you can take your time, and I think that's kind of neat. And I it's funny that you say about that the Greek heroes, and that's exactly the mentality in Jackal. That's why you're like a Jackal, right? You're a
Mhm.
scavenger, and you're not really you're welcome in town because you're gonna save us from the monster, but we don't want you to hang around,
Yeah.
right? So
You're not
it's
part
pretty
of a
interesting.
polite society.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
I
So
actually like that as a conceit if you get people to lean into it. I think Ed Greenwood, um, if you read some of when he writes stories set in the Forgotten Realm or his fantasy, that's kind of, at least early on, kind of what he would intimate was that, you know, adventurers are all a little bit crazy.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's
People are kind
cool.
of in awe of them, but are also, oh yeah, yeah, you can stay in the end for the night, but you know, again, because there's just recognition of anybody who would do what you do, something bad's going to happen if you hang around long enough.
All right. Yeah, well, so we won't get too far off, and we could probably talk all night. But BJ, I want you to give me like one anecdote where you got the players, just to bring
Right.
this all. Yeah, where you feel like you got them, like you're like you like were able to lean back in your GM's chair behind your you know with your little screen there and go, "I got you
Oh, oh. Let me think. I mentioned it earlier, like recruiting players just to kind of put in a twist or a surprise. I'm trying to think of the last time I did that. Do you have a good one that you want to share, and then maybe
I gave
I'll
a couple.
remember.
That's why I wanted you to give one. Yeah, I think
Um,
the classic one is a robot. Sorry, the droid resistance, right?
a lot of mine, unfortunately, some of my games fizzle out before I can get to the big,
Oh,
you know.
yeah, yeah.
Like I had one time where you know I was gonna have the players like you know missing love come back as like the assassin that was haunting their
Hmm.
steps, you know, and kind of only reveal who it was halfway through the adventure and never got that far. So that
That's
would
a
have been awesome.
bummer. So I guess that should be like a that should be one of your ambitions in BJ. Except not in the Temple of Elemental Evil. It's hard enough already. You don't have to trick us. Well, I don't. I think you. Well, I think um, you caught us off guard. I think with the assassin attempt.
That's true. Yeah, you guys
I
kind of
feel
thought,
you.
oh, we finished
We
part
finished the
one.
adventure.
We're yeah, we're gonna heal up in the end and
Head
head
on to the
off
next.
for the next part. And you know that really did generate two more set. I mean,
Yeah, we've just got now.
we've had two more game sessions just dealing with the fallout of that. and you guys going, what happened? What happened? Notes in the background about like who works for who,
Yeah, I know.
but that was a
That's
little
crazy. I think
mini investigation.
we've like unfolded like a conspiracy now in Hamlet, and is that more interesting? Do we want to leave Hamlet? I mean, we had a debate like whether as player characters, whether we want to leave Hamlet as it is because of all these conspiracies and all these bad people that we don't even know who they are, or go on to Nulb. And we did decide we're going to go on because I think that's where we want to cut the head off the snake, I guess. But you know, but in
We,
Hamlet, is it Hamlet safe? And that's in the at least in the back of my character's mind, you know, because of
well,
that. That to me, I mean, I'm sure it was in the adventure, but to me, it was like a twist. It's like you're right. I felt like, oh, we're safe. We're part owners of this inn. You know, we're gonna start making modifications. It was kind of like, you know, we're joking around, and then all of a sudden,
yeah, the players in the 5e campaign, their response was to take a couple extra days, and they just subtly went around town and just making the secret sign to everybody. Bumped it under the street. They went into every business.
oh wow,
After about 10 minutes, I was like, okay, all right, we won't have to role play this all out. I'll just tell you. Here's who you figure out, you know,
dang,
is in on it.
wow. So then they just line them up and have them hung or executed or something.
They turned them all over to Sir Rufus for
Wow,
interrogation and justice.
scary. They're becoming just like their the people they're trying to stop.
No, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
they got a fair trial. They got a chance to
Yeah, yeah.
beg for clemency, you know, and confess.
Yeah.
It's funny if you think about that. Gary Gygax is really. I don't know if you ever read his write up on why why it is classic D&D lawful good paladin. It is appropriate for a paladin to execute a villain on the spot summarily who has surrendered, and it really boils down to now you can face the gods of the clean conscience. You know,
Yeah. Well,
you
I mean,
committed
it's like
these crimes.
it's medieval
They warrant
justice,
death.
right?
I'm an agent of law. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, we did get that's interesting, and maybe this will be the last thing. So I did get it in the Enemy Within campaign. They found this like the village fool. And the village fool, they learned he had like a piece of like of warp stone, which is like chaos rock, and he had been the unfortunate victim of some ne'er do well dentist who went through town and fixed his rotting tooth by sticking some warp stone in his head. So you know he was a total, you know, totally a creature of chaos. Even spoke the black tongue, and but he was like a victim, right? But the witch hunter felt it was in their rights to just kill him. So I guess that is medieval justice. But
yeah.
I don't know. I felt rightly or wrongly that I think the players should get some corruption for that because they knew his story. You know, if he was just like a crazy chaos guy attacking random villagers, right? I get it. And they've actually dealt with not chaos people doing that, but some ruffians of a cult doing that.
Yeah.
But and they dealt out justice, right? But this they knew this guy's story. They knew he was innocent, and I felt that they knew that all they had to do was remove his warp tooth, and he would come back. But they decided not to do that. So I made him roll for corruption. But you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little harsh, and it is a harsh world, granted. But you know, there is also mercy. There are, you know, there's the goddess Shiloh, for example, who is the goddess of healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, that's sort of one of the cool things about the old world is you can get into those moral quandaries. You have to ask those questions, and I mean, it's there. I think it's there in D&D as well. It's just not as well encapsulated by the alignment system they use in D&D compared to the way they make it real in Warhammer.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it is like law versus chaos, right? And it's how you succumb to like how well you stave off being bad, which is being influenced by chaos, right?
Right. The fact that you can't. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, like being
humans are fallible. So,
Yeah.
so
So to me being merciless is like a call to Khorne,
yeah.
blood for the blood god, right? So
Yeah.
that's me. But yeah, I think that's interesting. So I do have this mechanic. I should share this. I have this mechanic in speaking of plot twists and the winds of fate. I do have a mechanic in Warhammer in my campaign where I have the players go around the table and roll a dice when they're traveling. And if they roll like a 6, 7, 8, or 9, then they know something bad is going to happen because the 6 through 9 are the numbers of the chaos gods.
Oh wow.
So I
I've
think
started doing that in
I thought it was cool. So like even going to like on their journey from Altorf to Middenheim, they're progressing up there, and then I have them roll like daily or I think twice a day or something like that. And then when I rolled like a when they rolled like the number for Khorne, I think it might be 8. I'm probably gonna get well. No one plays Warhammer who listens to me, but when I rolled the number for Khorne, they're like, oh, we're gonna have a battle. So I mean, it's kind of cool that they know something's gonna happen, but it also I think they
yeah.
also feel like
There's a portent.
there's a portent, and they feel like sometimes because we're on the right path because the chaos gods are looking at us, right? They're
Yeah.
coming at
Yeah.
so it's pretty interesting.
I've started in five. I haven't used it recently because I haven't had an opportunity to. But in Overland Travel in 5e, um, because you roll a d20 instead of a d6 for random encounters, um, I do it escalating where like I think the default in the DMG is 18 to 20 is a random encounter. But
Mm-hmm.
if you roll a die and you don't get a random encounter, the next time you roll is a 17. The next time after that it's a 6, and it ticks down. So people have this sense of, we can't piddle out here in the wilderness for too long because eventually it's anything below a 5 is above a 5 is going to trigger an encounter.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so that's cool. So it is. So for you Warhammer fans out there, I do know my Warhammer numbers. Slanesh is 6, Nurgle is 7, Khorne is 8. I was right, and Tzeentch is 9. So
so something
Slanesh being
bad,
yeah,
something bad that's going to happen, and you can kind of know the theme of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it worked out because there's like some things that could happen. What was nice in the adventure, here's some things that can happen along the road, and they give you some ideas. I'm like, oh, so if I roll like Slanesh, then it's going to be some sort of temptation or some sort of trickery, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it's Tzeentch, it's probably going to be a magical component, some weird magical component. Nurgle, maybe some disease, or I think Nurgle I had like the refugees coming out of a place, right? And they were, sick and bedraggled, but there could be a chance for some interaction. And then Khorne was a fight, so that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
How do you pull a trick on somebody? Kind of bring it back around. How do you pull a trick on somebody when they've just rolled a die, telling them that today there's gonna be some kind of trick?
I mean, like an encounter, or
Yeah, like
well, they
like
don't
they
know. They don't
know
know
that.
the exact nature of the encounter. They just feel like
Yeah.
they just have a bad feeling. And
Okay.
actually, I don't think all the players have hit on that idea on that yet. A few players are in the know about the old world.
Mhm.
They figured it out, but some players just I just rolled it. But I think because they don't know exactly what's going to happen. They just think they just have that the eye of Khorne is upon them. They have a portent. There's an ill wind coming type of thing, or it just happens. They don't know when it's going to happen. It just happens sometime during the day. But you're right. I could vary it. That's a good idea. I could vary it, or just like roll some dice in the background, and they think something happens,
Yeah.
but they're like, you make me a little paranoid. That'd be like a perfect one for like Slanesh, right? Make him a little paranoid. Roll some dice in the background. Like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. Well, cool. Well, thank you, BJ, for joining me. I think, like I said, we could talk probably all night about this type of subject, as chaotic as it has been. We've had twists and turns and jumped off the rails as appropriate for talking about plot twists and railroads. So, anything else you want to say? And if not, we'll
Um,
sign off.
we need to. Have you watched the Guillermo del Toro's series on Netflix yet?
No, is that peripheral? No, it's not peripheral. Is it? No,
Cabinet of Curiosities.
no, I have not seen that.
The horror anthology. We ought to do a review of that. Maybe
Okay.
Jason want to do that too if he's watched all of them. They're spoiler for everybody till we have a chance to discuss them.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be a good idea. Okay, so I guess BJ is recommending Carnival of no Cabinet of
Cabinet of
Curiosity.
Curiosities.
Cabinet of
Mhm.
Curiosities. All right, so we'll definitely
Two of them are they adapt. Two. There's I think there's 8 episodes. They're each adapted short stories by actual writers.
Mhm.
But two of them they do two Lovecraft stories. They do the Dreams in the Witch House
Oh wow,
and
that's cool.
Pickman's Model, which is we talked about Pickman's Model in the Ghoul episode.
Oh yeah, that's a great. Oh man, I could probably get if I tell Amy it's Cthulhu related, she'd be sure. That's my wife. She'd be sure to watch it because she's not a big fan of horror.
Crispin Glover Crispin Glover plays Pickman.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds really good. So I'll have to check that out. See what I recommend to watch recently. We've been enjoying Lower Decks. I know it's
Lower Decks,
somewhat a parody. And I was actually thinking if BJ we had not decided to, but it's kind of short notice. But like I think in the future, if it's just you and I, maybe we should do like a dual game. And I think Star Trek would work great like as a dual game, right? So many of those Lower Decks episodes are like focusing on one of the characters. Could easily do a dual game. So maybe we should think about that. Maybe have like one of us run a dual game in the future. There's also, since it's like according to Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast, it's Noir month. November is for Noir, so we could maybe do Cthulhu Confidential too, which is built. So anyway, so that's what I would look up. I'd look into Jason's podcast about Noir November, and I would recommend Lower Decks. I think is my current we're watching.
I've enjoyed it from the beginning first because the satire.
Yeah. But there's that's crazy. There's some serious. I mean, it does poke a lot of fun at standard about common Star Trek tropes. It does, but there's some serious episodes. I think so.
Yeah.
It's cool. All right. Well, thanks a lot, BJ, and we'll call it here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. You can contact me at gmologist@gmail.com. I have a SpeakPipe account. You can send me a text or a voice message on those through the Audio Dungeon Discord website. And you can also find me on the various Audio Dungeon Discords and leave me a message. And how can they contact you, BJ? Because maybe some people want
to. Pretty much the same. I've got the Arcane Alienist, so I have a SpeakPipe account. If you go to the page, the Arcane Alienist, you have a link there, arcane.alienist@gmail.com, or you can find me on the Audio Dungeon Discord.
Okay, great. Well, have a great night, folks, and go play some games and watch some fun TV.
Carl Rodriguez is the GM.